Okay, so you ready to dive into this whole UFO thing?
Always ready for a deep dive.
You shared some seriously fascinating stuff with me, all about this question that's been bugging humanity forever. Are we alone out there?
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it?
We've got excerpts from this book, The Cosmic Crisis, by Daniel Garretson. He's a journalist, UFO researcher, the whole shebang, plus this interview you dug up with him, which is just, wow. And then your own notes tying it all back to, well, us, human psychology, technology, the good stuff.
Right, because it's not just about little green men, is it? It's about what this whole idea of alien life says about us, our hopes, our fears, the whole existential enchilada.
Exactly. And it gets really interesting when you start looking at the stories, the first-hand accounts, alongside the bigger questions, like what makes someone believe they've seen a UFO? What happens to them afterward?
It's like that story about Ted Branson, the Air Force pilot, back in '57. Talk about a close encounter.
Oh, yeah, during the Cold War.
Right in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's patrolling near Guam, already on edge, Cold War tensions and all that. And then, boom, this blinding light appears out of nowhere, closing in on his plane faster than anything he's ever seen.
I'd freak out.
He thought it was a reflection at first, an easy mistake. But then this thing starts circling his plane, stays with him for 10 minutes. They even scrambled jets from a nearby base to intercept,
But nothing, right? It couldn't catch it.
too fast, too maneuverable. Whatever it was like nothing they'd ever seen before.
Mhm.
And this is where your observation about patterns really clicked for me. Because fast forward to 2004, and we have the Tic Tac UFO incident.
With Commander Fravor, right?
Exactly. Another highly skilled pilot, this time a Navy Top Gun, encountering something completely inexplicable.
And it's not just some blurry light in the sky this time. This is an object captured on multiple radar systems, infrared video by the Navy, doing things that would rip a normal aircraft apart, sudden stops, instant changes in direction, speeds that just shouldn't be possible.
It's like the laws of physics took a break for 15 minutes.
Seriously, it makes you wonder, what if these sightings are more than just, misidentified weather balloons or whatever?
Right, and it's not just the technology that's intriguing, it's the timing. Branson's sighting during the Cold War, Fravor's in a post-9/11 world, makes you think, could these sightings be connected to something else, like maybe societal stress, a way for our collective anxieties to manifest?
No, that's a thought. And that leads us right to Daniel Garretson, the journalist and UFO researcher you've been digging into. What I find fascinating is that he approaches this whole thing not just as a researcher, but as a storyteller. He's not just looking for evidence, he's trying to understand the narrative, the impact.
Exactly, and his book, The Cosmic Crisis, dives right into that impact, specifically what happens if we ever get confirmation. He doesn't just ask, are we alone? He asks, are we ready?
Because let's be real, it's one thing to speculate about little green men, but a whole other ballgame if they actually show up on our doorstep. But before we get into all that, let's rewind a bit. We've got this massive universe, billions of galaxies, stars with planets that could potentially support life, right? So where is everybody? Enter the Fermi paradox, am I right?
The million, or rather, billion-dollar question. Physicist Enrico Fermi, he's the one who famously asked, where is everybody? If intelligent life is statistically probable, even somewhat common, shouldn't we have encountered some sign of it by now?
Right. It's almost eerie when you think about it. It's like you're home alone at night and you hear a noise. You know something's out there, but you have no idea what it is. So how do we explain this cosmic silence?
Well, Garretson explores a few different possibilities, each more mind-boggling than the last.
Hit me with them.
One is the Great Filter Theory.
Great filter. Okay.
It suggests that civilizations might be inherently self-destructive.
Self-destructive, huh?
Yeah, like maybe we wipe ourselves out before we reach a certain technological level. Think climate change, nuclear weapons, or some technology we haven't even dreamed up yet. It's a pretty sobering thought. We like to think we're making progress, but what if we're just one technological breakthrough away from destroying ourselves? Kind of makes you rethink that whole march of progress idea, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it kind of plays into that very human fear of the unknown, right? We see something we don't understand, and our first instinct is often fear. But there are other explanations for the Fermi paradox, too.
Okay, so if it's not self-destruction, what else could it be?
One idea is the zoo hypothesis. Picture this. Advanced civilizations are out there, but they're watching us from afar.
Like we're animals in a cosmic zoo.
Exactly. They know we're here, but they're choosing not to interfere, at least not directly. Maybe they're waiting for us to evolve a bit more technologically or ethically before making contact.
Okay, now that's both fascinating and a little creepy. Are we just some cosmic reality show for super intelligent beings. What happens if they get bored with the plot? Or, decide they want to switch things up?
It's a question Gerritsen actually grapples with in his book. He uses the analogy of anthropologists studying an isolated tribe in the Amazon. Even with the best intentions, even just observing can have unintended consequences when you're dealing with a culture you don't fully understand.
Right, like even the act of observing something changes it, just by being there. But okay, back to these Fermi paradox explanations. You mentioned there were a few.
Right, so there's another one, a bit more, well, unsettling. It's called the dark forest theory. And it comes from this science fiction novel, The Three-Body Problem, which, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it.
Adding it to the list. Dark forest theory, you said?
Yeah, imagine the universe as this vast, dark forest, and every civilization is like a hunter hiding in the shadows. Now, here's the catch. Every civilization is also terrified of being found, because out there, in the darkness, there might be other, more advanced civilizations that aren't so friendly.
So it's like, stay quiet, stay hidden, or they'll hear you.
Exactly. In the dark forest, silence equals survival. It's a pretty bleak outlook, I'll admit, but it does make you think about the potential risks of, shouting into the void. What if we're not ready for the answer? Or worse, what if the answer is something we don't want to hear?
Okay, that's officially enough existential dread for one day. Let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. We've been talking a lot about theory, but you've also shared some pretty compelling historical accounts of UFO sightings, like actual events people have reported. And it seems like things really picked up after World War II, right? Like that's when this whole UFO craze really took off.
Yeah, definitely saw an increase then. You've got the Kenneth Arnold sighting in 1947, which is kind of iconic. Pilot flying near Mount Rainier sees these 9 unidentified objects zipping around.
9.
9. And he describes them moving like saucers skipping on water, and bam, the term flying saucer is born.
So that's where that comes from.
Patient zero for the flying saucer craze. And after that, it seemed like everyone and their dog was seeing UFOs.
Well, maybe not everyone.
Okay, maybe not everyone. But there was definitely this surge in sightings, and not just from, unreliable witnesses. We're talking military pilots, radar operators, people with technical training who are used to identifying objects in the sky.
People whose job it is to know what's up there.
Right, and they couldn't explain what they were seeing. And this is during the Cold War, remember? So everyone's on edge, looking for Russian spies and secret weapons.
Which leads to the U.S. government creating Project Blue Book, right? That whole official investigation into UFOs.
Exactly, Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
It was this big attempt to, get to the bottom of things, separate fact from fiction. But it's always been controversial. Some people think it was more about debunking and downplaying potential threats than genuinely investigating.
It's like that old saying, trust but verify. Except in this case, it was more like deny and obfuscate. But even Project Blue Book couldn't explain everything, could they?
Nope. There were cases they just couldn't crack, even with all the resources at their disposal. And some of those cases, well, they involved multiple witnesses, radar data, even photographic evidence. It wasn't just some guy saying he saw a light in the sky.
Which brings us back to the Tic Tac UFO. Because it's not just a blurry photo or a story told secondhand. This is multiple Navy pilots, trained observers saying they saw something truly bizarre.
And they've got the radar data to back it up. Data that's been analyzed by experts who are still scratching their heads.
It's like, what are we supposed to make of that?
It's hard to say. But what's interesting is that this whole resurgence in UFO interest, especially with recent government disclosures and all, it's not just coming from the fringes anymore. We've got people like Senator Harry Reid pushing for transparency, journalists like George Knapp digging into government secrets.
And then there's Robert Bigelow. Talk about a fascinating character.
Yeah, the billionaire who bought Skinwalker Ranch.
That's the one. He made his fortune in real estate, but he's been into UFOs since he was a kid. He even founded his own research organization, the National Institute for Discovery Science.
It's clear that something is shifting, and it's not just the cultural conversation. There's a growing recognition that there are things out there, phenomena, experiences, maybe even intelligences that we just don't understand.
Which brings us to, I think, one of the most important aspects of this whole conversation, the psychological side of things. Because even if we can't explain every UFO sighting, there's something to be said for how we, as humans, process the unknown. And where Carl Jung comes in, right? The psychologist.
Absolutely. Jung's work is crucial here, especially his ideas about archetypes and the collective unconscious.
Like his concept of visionary rumors. I remember reading about that.
Exactly. Jung saw UFOs not necessarily as literal spacecraft, but as modern myths that reflect our deepest anxieties, our hopes, our fears about the unknown.
So it's not that little green men are actually landing in cornfields. It's that the idea of them, the anxieties we project onto them, the whole what if it can manifest in these, well, kind of tangible ways.
Precisely. It's like our subconscious is using this language of the unknown, this imagery of UFOs and aliens, to communicate with us, especially during times of crisis.
Which would explain why there was a surge in UFO sightings during the Cold War, right? When everyone was on edge about nuclear annihilation.
Exactly. Jung noticed that. And you know what else? We saw a similar surge during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's like when the world feels uncertain, when our sense of normalcy is disrupted, we look to the sky, to the unknown, for answers or maybe just explanations.
Right, because we have to make sense of things even when we don't have all the information. It's like this basic human need to find patterns, connect the dots.
Exactly. And that's where things can get really interesting, but also potentially really messy.
Hmm?
Because when we're dealing with the unknown, our brains, they tend to, well, they fill in the blanks, right?
With our own biases, our preconceived notions.
Exactly. Our existing beliefs, our cultural baggage, even our fears. And suddenly, a strange light in the sky isn't just a strange light, it's a sign, a message, a threat.
And that brings us, I think, to one of the most controversial and frankly unsettling aspects of this whole UFO phenomenon, alien abductions.
Right, and this is where it gets really tricky. Garrettson, in his book, he doesn't dismiss the experiences of those claiming abductions.
He doesn't.
No, in fact, he emphasizes the very real trauma that many of these individuals report, the psychological and emotional scars that can last for years.
Because, I mean, it's one thing to see a weird light in the sky, right? But to
Right.
believe that you were actually taken aboard a spaceship, experimented on, that's a whole other level of, well, disturbing.
Absolutely. And it's not something to be taken lightly. But Garrettson also encourages us to consider other explanations, things that might seem strange, but are actually grounded in, well, science, like sleep paralysis, for example. Have you ever experienced that?
I think so. It's that thing where you wake up and you can't move, right?
Exactly. It's terrifying. Your brain is awake, but your body's still asleep. You might see shadowy figures, feel like something's pressing down on you, even hear voices, and your brain, desperate to make sense of this, draws on whatever it can.
So cultural imagery, anxieties, like you were saying.
Exactly. So instead of a shadowy figure, your sleep-deprived brain goes, must be a large-eyed alien, and suddenly you've got yourself an abduction story.
Wow. Okay, so not every abduction story is necessarily aliens.
Right, and it's not about saying that people didn't experience something. It's about understanding the physiological and psychological mechanisms that might be at play. There are also things like hypnopompic and hypnagogic hallucinations, which sound like something out of Harry Potter, but are actually just those weird, dreamlike states between waking and sleeping that can produce really vivid, often unsettling imagery.
So what you're saying is our memories, especially when it comes to these really extraordinary events, they're not always as reliable as we think they are.
Exactly. Our brains are constantly rewriting the script, so to speak, filling in gaps, smoothing out inconsistencies, trying to make sense of things. It's why eyewitness testimony, even when given in good faith, can be notoriously unreliable.
So how do we separate fact from fiction when it comes to UFOs, I mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think the key is to approach these things with a healthy dose of skepticism, but also with a sense of curiosity and wonder. The universe is full of mysteries, and if we're not willing to explore the unknown, well, we'll never discover anything new.
Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, that aliens are real and they decide to make contact, not just a few lights in the sky, but like a full-on take me to your leader kind of scenario.
Garrettson seems pretty concerned about how prepared we are for that kind of revelation.
He is. He paints a pretty sobering picture, actually, of what could happen. Imagine a world leader going on TV and announcing that, yep, aliens are real and they're on their way. The potential for chaos is, well, significant. We're talking social unrest, economic collapse, maybe even violence, widespread panic.
People running through the streets convinced the sky is falling. It's not that far-fetched, honestly. Think about the reactions to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast, or even the COVID-19 pandemic. People are susceptible to fear, especially when they're dealing with the unknown. And then there's the impact on organized religion. That's got to be huge.
Right. How do you reconcile centuries of doctrine, of belief, with the existence of being so far beyond our understanding?
That's one of the key points Garrettson makes. We spent so much time debating if aliens exist that we haven't stopped to think about what happens if they ever show up. It's like we're so focused on the question that we haven't considered the answer.
And he's saying we need to start considering the answer, like now.
Now, before it's too late. He even suggests that governments should be developing protocols, communication strategies, a whole playbook, essentially, for managing this kind of global event. Because, let's be honest, right now, we're not ready.
And it's not just about managing the initial shock, right? We're talking about long-term societal shifts. How do we process the knowledge that we're not alone, that there might be civilizations out there far more advanced than our own?
Exactly. A
Yeah.
whole new world. It would change everything. Our understanding of technology, religion, our place in the universe, everything. Like Gerritsen says, first contact wouldn't be the end of the story. It would be the beginning of a whole new chapter.
It's a lot to process. Exciting, terrifying, mind-blowing, all of it.
That pretty much sums it up, yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners plenty to chew on for today. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that the universe is full of mysteries, and the search for answers, even if they're not the answers we expect, is ultimately a journey of self-discovery. The questions we ask, the way we choose to interpret the unknown, it reveals as much about us as it does about the cosmos. So keep asking those big questions, even the uncomfortable ones. Keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep an open mind.
Well said. It's been a fascinating conversation. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back on this as the moment when humanity started taking this whole "are we alone" question seriously. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so get this. What if some ancient cultures, like way back, didn't just tell, like, stories, but actually put real history, like actual events, into their myths?
Fascinating.
Yeah, we're diving into the world of the Hopi people for this deep dive.
Okay.
Their prophecies are incredible, and, well, what they might tell us about, our past, maybe even our future, we're going to find out.
Right.
And to help guide us, we've got some incredible insights from Dr. Yvonne Stratman. She's like an expert on this stuff, and she was on this Crop FM podcast episode.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So let's jump in.
Okay, so you're talking about geomythology, right? It's this really cool area of study where researchers, they look for links between like myths and real geological events, earthquakes, volcanoes, even floods.
Right, and it's like, whoa, these oral traditions pass down, generation after generation.
Yeah, right.
They might actually be surprisingly accurate records of those events.
Yeah, exactly. It really makes you think about how we try to record history, but then it gets edited, rewritten.
All the time.
But these oral traditions, they're like this direct line to the past.
That's blowing my mind a little, I gotta say. And the Hopi, they're like the masters of this, right? Oral history?
They are. Archaeologists have actually looked at their accounts, and it's amazing. They're really accurate.
Really?
Yeah, and it's even more impressive when you think about how they actually preserve this knowledge,
Yeah.
Pure memorization.
Wow.
It's intricate details about their history, beliefs, prophecies, all passed down through generations with incredible accuracy.
That's wild. It's like learning a whole library, like by heart.
So what does all this meticulously preserved history tell us about how the Hopi, view the world?
It's really interesting. They have this cyclical view of creation and destruction.
Okay.
They believe a powerful being, Sotuknen, has created and destroyed 4 worlds so far.
4.
4. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Each destruction, it follows a similar pattern.
Okay.
Fire, then ice, and then this massive flood. It's almost like a reset button for the planet,
Okay, hold on. A pattern of fire, ice, and floods. That can't just be some random coincidence.
Right.
That makes you wonder, were they seeing real cataclysmic events happening again and again?
Makes you think.
But what about the people during these world-ending events? Did anybody survive? Well, that's where the story gets even more intriguing. The Hopi believe that some people were chosen to survive each destruction.
Okay.
And here's the thing. They had help. They talk about this thing called a kopavi.
How Kopavi?
Yeah, they describe it as like a crown that you wear on your head.
Okay.
Similar to, that idea of a crown chakra.
Oh, right, yeah.
And this kopavi, it allowed them to connect with Sotuknong and receive guidance.
So it's like their spiritual antenna.
Exactly.
Their direct line to the divine.
Exactly.
But how did this Kopavi actually help them survive like a world-ending event? We're talking like the planet's blowing up here, right?
Well, think of it like a spiritual early warning system. So those with a functioning kopavi, meaning, they were in tune with their spiritual side, they'd get these instructions from Sotuknong guiding them to safety. He'd tell them to follow maybe a star at night, a cloud by day, anything, leading them to this gathering point.
Wow. So they've got this like spiritual guidance system,
Right.
but they still needed a real, physical refuge, right? A safe haven somewhere to hide from these cataclysms.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really wild.
So wait, did you say the ant people, like actual ants?
Well, not exactly ants like we know them.
Okay.
The Hopi, they describe them more like beings, right? But with these narrow hips.
Narrow hips. That's an interesting detail.
Right. And they lived in these like super intricate underground shelters.
Right. Okay, so underground, like a whole civilization just like vibing beneath the surface.
Exactly. Safe and sound from all the chaos up top.
Wild. I'm trying to like actually picture these ant people in my head though. Narrow hips, you said. Like, were skinny jeans a thing in the previous world?
Maybe. But here's the thing. There's this really fascinating part in the Hopi account. So Tuknang, he actually tells the chosen humans to learn from these ant people.
So it's not just about like holing up and surviving, right? There's this whole learning aspect to it.
It's like these cataclysms, right? There were also opportunities.
Okay.
Like a chance to level up.
To like download new skills. What kind of knowledge are we talking about here?
So that's the really mind-blowing part. After every single one of these destructions, the surviving humans, they would come out with new skills, stuff they never had before.
What, like suddenly they're master chefs?
Not exactly, but like, for example, after that first world, they came out knowing how to build settlements, how to trade, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, wow.
They even, like, stopped talking to animals.
Wait, what? Hold up. They could talk to animals before.
Apparently, yeah. It's like they went through this underground crash course in, I don't know, Civilization 101.
Wow. That is wild. So it's not just about, like, the Hopi getting knowledge. It's about getting it from being so different from them. What does that tell us about how they viewed knowledge and learning?
It's like this deep respect for wisdom,
Yeah.
no matter where it comes from.
Yeah.
The Hopi tradition, it suggests that knowledge, it goes beyond just us, even beyond our planet.
I mean, think about it, right? These stories, they were passed down for generations.
Right.
Long before we were even talking about, like, aliens or anything like that.
It makes you wonder what else they knew.
Right. Like, what else is still out there?
Exactly.
But how does this all connect back to us? Like, to our world now, the fourth world, right?
Okay, so the Hopi, they say the third world ended in a massive flood. This time, though, they didn't go to the ant people.
Really?
Yeah, they describe surviving in these sealed tubes.
Sealed tubes. I mean, talk about a survival strategy. What were those like?
And get this, they were guided by this being they call Spider-Woman.
Spider-Woman.
To this high mountain, which they say was the highest point of their world after everything got flooded.
Wow, so they're literally outrunning, like, the planet changing.
And this detail, it suggests that maybe their journey, it wasn't through space like some people think.
Yeah.
It was across the planet.
During, like, crazy sea levels rising.
That's right.
Okay, so they're running from the waves, following Spider-Woman. Where does it all lead?
America. They actually describe landing here.
No way.
Being greeted by Sotiknang, and he shows them these stepstones, basically these islands that help them reach the new world.
Okay. That's like an actual path.
Right. And it's in this new land that they meet another mysterious group, the Katina.
Okay, now the Kachina, those are the beams with the, like, really intense masks, right? The ones we see pictures of.
Yeah, those are the ones. And you got to remember, these stories were being told way back in 1963.
Okay.
Long before a lot of this stuff was even, like, something people talked about.
Right.
But the Hopi, they're very clear about this.
Mm-hmm.
There are two types of Kachina.
Two types. All right, now you have to tell me more. Who are these Kachina? So two types of Kachina, you said. We've got the nature spirits, and then the real deal Kachina.
Yeah. So the Hopi, they describe them as beings from other planets. They became their teachers.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about, like, extraterrestrial contact way back then.
And this isn't like a new interpretation or anything. This comes straight from their oral history.
Wow, that's incredible. Passed down for, what, centuries?
At least.
Okay, so what kind of things did these, like, alien Kachina teach them?
Well, they describe building a whole city called Palatquapi.
Palatquapi.
It might have been somewhere in South America.
Okay.
And get this, in Palatquapi, the Kachinas shared all sorts of knowledge.
Like what?
I mean, we're talking about the human body, the stars, how they influence us, stuff like that.
That's wild. It's like what we're just figuring out now with modern science, they were learning thousands of years ago from these Kachina. It's pretty mind-blowing. It really is. What happened to this city? And what about the Kachina, the ones who were teaching there?
So the story goes that Palatquapi, it was attacked.
Oh, no.
And the Kachina, they chose to stay and defend it, while the Hopi escaped.
Through these tunnels?
Yeah, secret tunnels. But before they left, the Kachina, they told the Hopi, remember us. Remember us through masks and ceremonies.
Wow. And they actually kept that tradition alive. Those Kachina costumes, the rituals, it's all to remember that contact.
It's a powerful reminder.
It really is. But it wasn't all just, knowledge and good times, right?
Yeah.
The Kachina, they also left behind some prophecies about the future.
Yeah, and we're not talking about some vague predictions. They left 9 specific signs that would signal the end of the fourth world, our world.
And these signs, they line up with, actual things happening today.
Some people think so. Like that 9th sign, the one about a dwelling place in the sky falling to Earth.
People are saying that's the International Space Station, right?
Yeah. But the Hopi, they didn't really do dates. It's more about recognizing the patterns, the cycles repeating.
So less about a specific year and more about understanding the larger message.
Exactly.
That makes sense. What about that speech that Hopi elder Thomas Banyasha at the UN 1992, wasn't it?
Right. The Hopi elders decided they had to share their knowledge with the world.
Because of what was happening even back then.
They saw the wars, the environmental problems. To them, it was like their prophecies were coming true.
So Banyasha, he was like a messenger.
You could say that. He urged everyone to, turn away from just material things, reconnect with nature, find a better way to live.
It's interesting because that message, it's like a solid game plan for surviving any kind of major disaster,
Right. And when you think about it, those values, they line up with being able to not just survive, but actually be okay after something big happens.
Thrive, even.
Yeah, exactly. Thrive.
It's like a survival guide hidden in the prophecy. But, it gets even more, intense. There's that prophecy about the Kachina taking their masks off in front of kids, right? The ones who haven't been initiated. And then the spiritual war happens.
That's a big one.
It is. And I gotta be honest, it's a little scary.
So imagine, right? Suddenly everyone knows, it's revealed. These beings, these real Kachina, they exist. They've been here.
And then
chaos. Everything we thought we knew, out the window. It'd be huge.
The ultimate disclosure event. We're already freaking out about finding microbes on Mars. Can you imagine? But you said spiritual war. What does that even mean?
It might not be a war with, guns and bombs,
Okay.
More like a clash of ideas. Ooh. People who cling to the old ways.
Yeah.
Fighting against this new reality. The Hopi, I think they were trying to warn us about what happens when we're too stuck in our beliefs, especially when the unknown shows up.
So it's not just about surviving a flood or an earthquake. It's about surviving our own minds freaking out.
Maybe. And that struggle, that fight to adapt, it might be at the center of this whole Blue Star Kachina prophecy.
The Blue Star Kachina. That's the one that's supposed to, herald the end of the fourth world, right? Is it a real star, up in space?
Well, they say it's a blue star. It appears in the sky, and then boom.
The end.
But with that 9th sign, they don't really give specifics. Is it a comet? Some other celestial event? Something else entirely?
Given everything we talked about, with these cataclysmic cycles and all, it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, it's another planet killer. But what I find really interesting is that the Hopi prophecies, they don't end with just destruction. There's a way forward. They talk about a fifth world.
It's a message of hope.
Right. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's a chance to not just make it through, but to actually be better off in this new world.
Exactly. But that hope, it depends on us changing, breaking out of these old habits and embracing a new way of being.
Okay, so what does that mean? What does that look like?
The Hopi, they talk about living in balance with nature, respect for all life, recognizing that we're all connected. It's about shifting from this me-first attitude to one of cooperation, compassion. We're all in this together.
It's about realizing our choices, they matter.
Yeah. What we do affects everything around us.
It all comes back to those Kachina taking off their masks. It's like this forced wake-up call for all of us to see ourselves good and bad.
It makes you think, these prophecies, they're not just predicting. They're making us look at ourselves.
It's a challenge.
It is. What are we creating? What kind of future are we choosing?
Big questions. So if someone's listening to this, right, and they want to learn more about the Hopi, the prophecies, this whole connection between ancient cultures and our future, where do they even start?
Dr. Stratman's book, The Stone Age Paradox, is a great place. She does a phenomenal job, really ties everything together.
And she'll be at that Pittis Congress coming up.
Right.
So definitely check that out if you want to go even deeper down the rabbit hole. Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive on the Hopi. Their prophecies, this future they talk about, it's definitely given us a lot to think about. And if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that.
We have a choice. The future isn't set. It's what we make it. Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive into unlocking your potential. We're going to be exploring Wallace D. Wattles' How to Promote Yourself. And let me tell you, this book is a gem, even though it's from 1914. We've also got some other great stuff lined up to help you really up your game.
Yeah, these sources are amazing.
They offer some seriously timeless wisdom. Okay, so you might be wondering, 1914.
Right.
Is that really relevant today?
Yeah.
And that's totally fair. But trust me on this, the stuff in here, it stood the test of time.
Absolutely. Timeless principles.
Whether you're going for that big promotion, just want to level up in life, or, hey, maybe you're like me and you love a good life hack.
Oh, yeah.
This deep dive is going to give you some seriously actionable insights to unlock your full potential.
We're going to help you take action. That's the goal.
Exactly.
Take these timeless principles and make them work for you today.
Yeah, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Wattles, he starts off strong with what he calls the business attitude.
Yeah.
And he's all about this self-directing mindset.
Okay.
Meaning you're not just a product of your circumstances, right?
Right.
You choose your thoughts, you choose your actions.
You're in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Powerful stuff.
It's huge, right?
It is. And what's so interesting is how relevant that is today.
Oh, absolutely.
We are just bombarded. Think about it. Information overload, opinions coming at us from all sides. It's so easy to feel like you're just kind of,
Yeah, just swept along with it.
Exactly. So being intentional about what you let influence you.
Yes.
That's key.
That's huge, yeah.
That's really taking control.
Absolutely. Being deliberate.
Yes.
And Wattles, he doesn't stop there.
No, he keeps going.
He talks about success as this ongoing evolution.
I love that.
It's a journey, right? It's not like you reach this destination.
Yeah, it's not a finish line.
And I love how he ties that into this idea that you got to master where you are, your current level.
Master your current level before you can even think about the next one.
Exactly, before you're ready for what's next.
Yeah.
It's not about just climbing the ladder blindly.
It's about building that solid foundation.
Yes.
Like that saying.
What is it? You can't run before you can walk?
Exactly. You got to build those skills.
Foundation is key.
Okay, I love that. Building that foundation.
That's essential.
So then he goes into this other powerful concept, the power of desire and belief. And this one is interesting.
Oh, yeah.
He says that just simply desiring something strongly, like really wanting it,
is actually proof that you have the potential for it.
Interesting. Now, I know some people might hear that and think, well, isn't that just wishful thinking?
Right, exactly.
But I had a different take on it when I was reading this.
Okay, I like it.
It's not about just wishing for something to magically happen.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that desire, that deep yearning.
It's coming from somewhere.
Exactly. It's coming from something deep inside you.
Okay.
And that thing inside you.
It's seeking expression.
Yes. It sees a possibility.
I like that.
It's saying, hey, this could be you.
It's interesting, right?
It is, because it connects to this idea of belief fueling action, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this ties in perfectly to what the publisher emphasized in the intro.
Oh, I know. I love how they put it. The life of all success is the spirit of faith and goodwill.
Yes. You have to believe it to see it.
And it's great. Wattles actually gives a really practical tip for this.
Oh, I love practical tips.
Oh, me too. He says, vividly picture what you want.
Oh, okay.
Hold that image in your mind.
Like a vision board, but in your head.
Yes. And that will make that desire even stronger.
I love that. I'm all about that visualization.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, okay, so another concept that Wattles really emphasizes is this idea of more than filling your place.
I like that phrase.
It's catchy, right?
It is.
And he's all about going above and beyond.
Exceeding expectations.
Yes. And not just to impress your boss.
Right, it's bigger than that.
It's about your own growth.
Exactly.
And what's so cool is how he connects this back to his whole thing about success as this evolution, right?
It all ties together.
Yeah. So by pushing yourself beyond like the bare minimum, you're naturally developing the skills and the mindset
that you're going to need for that next level.
Exactly.
Even if you're not there yet.
So it's like you're almost training for a promotion that you don't even have yet.
Exactly. You're preparing for those future opportunities.
I love that.
You're investing in yourself.
Yes. Investing in your growth.
Whether anyone notices or not.
That's powerful. Okay, now let's get into something that might seem a little out there at first.
Oh, okay. I like it.
It's Waddle's idea of the advancing thought.
Okay.
He says we should be infusing this expanding thought into everything we do.
Everything.
Even something as, what might seem kind of mundane.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like even if you're, I don't know, selling a pound of sugar.
Okay, now that's interesting.
Right. Sounds a little abstract, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so what does he mean by this expanding thought? I was a little confused at first, too.
Yeah, break it down for us.
I think what he's really getting at is cultivating an abundance mindset.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
It's about seeing potential for growth and positive change
Okay.
in literally every interaction, every single one.
Wow. Wow.
And not just for yourself,
Right, right.
for the other person, too.
It's like that energy, that belief in abundance.
It can be contagious.
Yes, it rubs off on people. Totally. It's like instead of just going through the motions, you're really looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, to add value, make it meaningful.
Yes, to elevate every interaction. So we've talked about the power of mindset, the importance of growth, but now let's get to a really interesting part. Waddle's law of opulence.
This one is where things get kind of radical.
It really does challenge conventional thinking.
Okay, so he basically says competition, limited resources.
That whole idea, he's not buying it.
Like, whoa, going against the grain here.
Big time. He believes that true abundance, it comes from recognizing that potential is limitless.
Okay, so not just thinking there's enough to go around.
It's way bigger than...
It's like an unlimited pie, almost.
Exactly. He's saying there's enough for everyone to thrive.
Okay, I love that. But how do we actually, live that way when the world can feel so competitive?
Right, and he addresses that.
He uses some pretty bold examples.
He does.
Like saying the U.S. could produce enough food and clothing for the whole world.
Yeah, and, while those specific examples might seem, I don't know...
A little out there.
Yeah, maybe a little idealistic in today's world, but the message underneath it...
That's what's important.
It's huge. It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset...
But there's not enough mentality.
...to one of abundance.
There's more than enough if we just figure it out.
Yes. It's so powerful because it changes everything.
It does. Okay, so if competition's the problem, how do we escape it? Waddles talks about aligning ourselves with the mind of nature.
Ah, yeah, the mind of nature.
And I gotta be honest, that sounds a little, I don't know.
A little vague.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Yeah, he gets a little mystical there, but I think what he's getting at is this idea of interconnectedness, right? Like when we focus only on our own gain, especially if it's at the expense of others.
It's like a very limited view.
Very. We're tapping into this tiny little pool of resources.
Okay, so the opposite then would be...
when we operate from a place of service, of abundance, where we genuinely want everyone to succeed.
It opens up more possibility.
Exactly. It's like tapping into a river, this constant flow of prosperity and opportunity.
So it's not about ignoring our own needs or withdrawing from the world.
No, not at all. It's about changing our approach within it.
Recognizing that we're all connected.
Exactly. We can achieve so much more when we're working together, supporting each other,
It's powerful stuff.
It is. It's about moving from a transactional mindset
Like, what's in it for me?
to a transformative one.
I like that. Okay, so then we get to man and money. And this is where Waddles really gets into his, core philosophy.
Yeah, he's laying it all out.
He says that God, or this mind of nature we were just talking about.
Universal force.
Yeah, wants everyone to thrive, to prosper.
To be abundant.
But it's not like a free handout, right?
No, definitely not. He's not saying we just sit back and wait for it to happen.
Okay, so what's the key then?
It's about aligning our actions with this principle of abundance.
So we have to do our part.
Exactly. When we genuinely want the best for ourselves and for others, and we act with integrity, with faith, then we open ourselves up to those possibilities.
It's like we become a channel for that abundance to flow through.
Beautifully put. And speaking of taking action, that leads us perfectly to the chapter Talk That Builds, which focuses on the power of our words and thoughts.
Oh, this is huge. I've been really trying to be more mindful of my own self-talk lately.
It makes a world of difference.
Waddles is very clear about this.
He is.
Dwelling on negativity, lack, what we don't have, it keeps us stuck.
It's like that saying, what you focus on expands.
That's true.
If we're constantly feeding our minds with negativity, with scarcity.
That's what we're going to see more of.
Exactly. But If we make a conscious effort to shift our focus to the positive, to abundance, to gratitude for what we do have.
It's like changing the channel in our minds, right?
Exactly. And we open ourselves up to a whole new reality, a new way of experiencing the world.
It's about recognizing that our thoughts, our words, they have so much power.
They do. They shape our reality.
Instead of complaining about what's missing, we should be talking about what we want to create.
Absolutely. Shifting that conversation from scarcity to possibility, from complaint to creation. And that actually brings us to our final source for today's deep dive, victory and defeat.
Oh, yeah. This one is so powerful.
It really is.
And it pairs perfectly with everything we've been talking about.
It does, especially that idea of resilience and growth.
Because it reminds us that setbacks, they're not the end of the story.
Not at all. They're just part of the journey.
In fact, they can even make us stronger.
Exactly. It's all about how we choose to respond to those challenges, those inevitable bumps in the road.
This one line from the excerpt really stuck with me. When the great oak is straining in the wind, the boughs drink in new beauty, and the trunk sends down a deeper root on the windward side.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's such a powerful metaphor, right?
It is, because it shows us that adversity, it can actually be transformative.
Like the oak tree deepening its roots to weather the storm.
Exactly. And we can do the same thing.
It's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but I don't know, it's just...
It's more poetic.
Yeah.
More beautiful.
Way more beautiful.
It's about finding the beauty in the struggle, you know?
Yeah, I like that, finding the beauty.
Finding those opportunities for growth, even when things are tough.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, thinking about unlocking your potential, I think it really comes back to this idea of aligning with that mind of nature,
Right.
that force of abundance and growth that Wattles talks about.
So it's about really shifting our perspective.
Yeah. It's like taking off a pair of glasses that makes everything look small and limited.
And putting on a new pair.
And putting on a new pair that shows you the expansiveness of what's possible.
Okay, I like that. I like that visual.
It's about recognizing, not scarcity.
There's not enough to go around.
Right, but abundance.
We're all in this together.
Yes.
More than enough to go around if we just work together.
Exactly. Collaboration over competition.
Yes, and I think ultimately realizing we're all connected.
We are.
Part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Beautifully said. And on that note, that idea of interconnectedness, that limitless potential, it makes me think, what if?
What if?
What if you truly believed in your own limitless potential?
Oh, deep question.
It is. How would that change things? How would that change your approach to your work, to your relationships, to your life as a whole?
That's something to really sit with.
It is.
To think about, to journal.
Let it really sink in.
Yeah, and on that note, keep exploring, keep growing.
Absolutely. Keep that journey going.
And we will catch you in the next deep dive.